Yeah, I think it's such a valid point. Exactly. You're preaching to people that already care about it. That's why you guys are here, because in some capacity you care about diversity and inclusion or equality. But actually, the people that don't even think about it are the ones that we need to get more involved. Really valid. Okay, brilliant. Have you guys got any questions at this point before I crack on to the Q&A session? Yeah? Oh my gosh. I asked that and then I don't know how this is going to work yet.
Hi, I have a question for, you're talking about bringing more men into the equation that don't get it. And I think part of the reason that I've come here is to find out, like, what are some of the things that we can do? So there are difficult conversations that have to be had. Have you got any examples of where you have been in situations, whether it's meetings or external events with senior people, where you've called out behaviour or where you've seen situations? Because I think that's some of the struggle I even see where I work, is that you talk to the people that get it and then they want to bring along the people that don't get it, but there's some authority reason that they feel that they can't. So it is about being brave, but they also need to be strategic about how they do it as well. So I'd be interested to hear some examples. Oh, sorry.
Not just me then.
Yeah, I've come across that, and it's been people lack of awareness as opposed to nastiness. And a few examples. So I was at a meeting the day after, the morning after Donald Trump was elected, and we had a guest speaker in who was a lady, and one of the audience, as she got up, she said something about Donald Trump and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Donald Trump's the big news today, but all you've got is me." And somebody thought it was okay to say, "Oh, you're a lot better looking than Donald Trump." So there's that type of example. And in the middle of the meeting, I didn't do anything. I regretted later and thought, well, should I have called it out there and then? A few weeks later, I was at a meeting where, and I think I was mentioning this to a few people earlier on, that we were talking about the construction industry, and one of the ladies in the room said, remember, you've got women in the construction industry as well. And I did take this up straight away. Some guy said, yeah, you need somebody to make the tea, don't you? And what I did, I actually sent an email of apology to the person he said that to. I picked up with his manager, and I got all of my management team together and say, this is just not acceptable. And for someone to be saying, oh, there's a woman here, she's here to make the tea. In 2017, no one would say to me, oh, look, there's an Asian guy here, he must be here to make the curry. It just wouldn't happen, right? Maybe in the 70s it would have, but it doesn't happen. But yet with women, that's okay to say they're here to make the tea. So I got all my management team together because I'd been thinking, how do I address this? And I was really cross with myself that I didn't know what to do in that moment with that Donald Trump. And so I've made it really clear with my management team, it's not acceptable for any of their teams, or if just observing it, they've got to do something about it. And they were actually really pleased I brought it up, because they said, well, actually, that's just been sales culture. It's always been what sales teams are like. It's just part of the way it is. And I said, but you get that it can't be. And they were like, yes. And the women on my management team were saying, God, in 20 years, I've never, ever heard, a sales director talk like that. And I think having not known quite how to address it, which is your point about bravery and boldness, sort of at the second or third strike, I went, God, I'm saying I believe in all this, but I haven't even got the bravery to say something in the moment. I've got to, if I don't do it, then who else is going to do it? So it was a little bit nerve-wracking confronting it.
Yeah, I had a recent... So there's a couple of things that have happened. So there's one that somebody mentioned something that affected me personally, and I was like, you can't say that, that's not acceptable. Someone said that's so gay, which is really stupid thing to say anyway, but it's still kind of used in the day-to-day. And I was like, well, actually, if you just said that's so woman, that's so Muslim, that's so any other thing, like it doesn't make any sense anyway, but it's kind of pointless. And I called it out. And then a couple of weeks ago, and this is talking about being brave, I missed an opportunity, but then I kind of rectified it. And I was in a cafe, and you kind of go paid and waited for the food. And I I didn't have a receipt. I was given a receipt, and two guys before me were also given a receipt. And the person kind of giving the takeaway items were like, "Guys, have you got your receipts?" And showed the receipts, got their food and went off. But the guy didn't ask me. The two guys before me were black, and I was like, "Why didn't you ask me for a receipt?" Because and he was like, "Oh, I don't know. I just did." And I was like, "Well, why are these two people getting different treatment to me? Why you should be asking me for a receipt as well." And you could see that he was like, his bias had crept in, and you have to kind of, it wasn't anyone, it wasn't in the work environment, it was just in the day to day, but having to be brave and kind of go, and then, for a moment, I didn't even realize my white privilege kicked in, and I was like, cool, I didn't even notice. But then I took a moment to kind of reflect on it. I was like, that's not okay, and said it there and then. But it's seeing those opportunities.
I think one of the things that we've done, and it really works, is first of all, part of our program is to educate people and give them permission to call it out whenever they witness that. But not only that, that's only, I guess, half of it, but teach them methods and get them to practice methods of calling it out. And then we practice methods that are non-confrontational because we feel that is better because it creates, I guess, less arguments, but it's also because people feel more comfortable doing that as opposed to calling out someone out and blaming them. We teach them methods through questioning to call it out, which really creates a pause for the other person to think about what they said and the impact that it might have had on a colleague. And we've seen that working really well. We've seen that working not so well because it has created more debate. But I guess that's positive as well. So you have to expect that will happen when you give permission for people to call it out. You will get more instances of people calling it out, and you need to make sure that you can support them in resolving if it ever gets to conflict as well. But that has worked for us.
Okay, brilliant. Right, so